This is VSiN, the sports betting network. This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Thursday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line, getting you ready for all the sports action in this day ahead with the best betting insights. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford. Here's what we got coming up on the show today. Two guests for you: Simon Hunter, NFL betting analyst for the Action Network, joining us at 7:45 Eastern, and then the Mike Palm, Circa VP of Operations, joining us at 9:15 Eastern with an update on the Survivor contest and Palm's pressing three for Michael Lombardi. Coming up in this first hour of the show, we are breaking down Monday Night Football between the Vikings and Rams, getting into the NFL news of the day. Bryce Young, Jameis Winston are going to start this weekend. Then we're playing a little fade or follow with some college football betting trends, getting into Michael's updated NFL power rankings, and wrapping the hour with the Action Network's Simon Hunter. So let's get into Thursday Night Football between the Vikings and the Rams. This number is kind of bounced back and forth between 2.5 and 3. The Vikings, the road favorite here, with a total set at 48. But the Vikings coming off their first loss of the season, a last-second loss on a field goal to the Lions. They gave up a season-high 31 points in that one. Michael, how does Minnesota recover or bounce back from their first loss of the season?
Well, this is obviously a completely different opponent. I mean, when you break down the Rams team, they're just not very good in a lot of areas, especially defensively. They can't stop the run against anyone. They're 30th in yards allowed. They're 25th in yards per attempt in the running game. And then, of course, they're not very good at stopping the forward pass. They're 29th. Their defense has really struggled. But one of the things that has been a tradition and has been a stellar point to the Sean McVay offense is running the football. He needs to run the ball for his offense to be effective. And this year he can't really run the ball. They have their run game is not effective. They're 27th in yards per attempt. You know, they've only scored 114 points in 6 games, which they can't consistently put a lot of good plays together. And the Vikings are really a good team. Aaron Jones, he didn't practice the other day. It's a short week, but they need him in there. One of the things that concerns you about the Vikings is in week 2, I think it was, you know, the Packers were up 28-0. They were up 28-0 in that game. The Packers came back. They still won 31-29. The Jet game over in London, they're up 17-0. The Jets came back, but they still won 23-17. And then against Detroit, they're up 10-0. And, of course, Detroit came back to 21-10. They took the lead. So they're going to have to play a little better defense. Thursday night games are always hard to handicap. But on paper, this line looks a little short at 3 with the Vikings.
The Vikings are one of the best rush defenses in the NFL, only allowing 4.0 yards per rush, 5th best in the NFL right now. And so as you look at this Rams team as they go into tonight, they've already been struggling with the rush. They're going to have to try and rush against this team, and I don't think it's going to be too successful. If you look at where the Rams are right now in terms of their standings, if you look at where they are in terms of their quarterback and some of these injuries, Michael, it feels to me tonight is just going to be one of the signs that this thing is coming to an end in terms of the Rams' tenure, this version of the Rams that as we know it. We've heard the rumors about Matthew Stafford potentially retiring.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he's going to retire. He's too much money to walk away from. But, I mean, they're certainly looking at it. They're interested in moving some pieces around. And I think the Rams may know that this time is come on this team. You know, they're talking about trading Cooper Kupp. I think everybody makes a big deal out of that. But Cooper Kupp has yet to prove since he had in 21 that he could stay healthy. And that's players, but one of them got hurt. You know, they added Kevin Dotson from Pittsburgh. And they were able to, but, you know, he's been hurt. And then when you look at the other players, I mean, they've really struggled, whether it's the center, Steve Olave, he's on injured reserve. Jonah Jackson, who they signed a huge money, he's on injured reserve. Connor McDermott, who they picked up, he's on injured reserve. So they've had a hard time keeping this offensive line at its normal levels.
Cooper Kupp expected to play tonight. He's been sidelined since spraining his ankle in week 2. However, the biggest news to come out of this week is the Rams being open to trading him. Well, the wide receiver was asked about those rumors. Here's what he had to say ahead of Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of it, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm gonna be where my feet are. That's all I know. I have a job to do here, and I take a lot of pride in giving everything I can for the guys in this building, and being able to step on the field knowing that I've prepared the best I can. And for 7.5 years I've been an LA Ram, and I've taken that approach every single day. And whatever happens outside of that, I got control what I can control, and right now that means being the best LA Ram that I can be, and I'm going to continue to do that.
I think that's certainly the best attitude to take. But I mean, look, this is a business. We all know it. He's the second highest paid player on the team behind Matthew Stafford. The Rams are even willing to pay for his salary to move him. And I think that's something that has to happen in the deal. I think everybody's concerned. Look, if you say Cooper Kupp, fans think of 2021. You say Cooper Kupp today, you think of durability issues. You think of him not being as explosive. The injuries have taken a toll on his body. There's no question. Could he help somebody on the short run? Yeah, but what's the price for that? I think that ultimately comes down cost versus longevity is the issue here. There's a lot of teams looking for receivers. The Patriots are trying to trade Taquan Thornton. They've had a lot of phone calls about Kendrick Bourne. I doubt if they'll do that one because, he's kind of their glue to their team. They need him on their team, but in terms of the wide receiver room, which they don't have a lot of talent in there. So, look, the Hopkins deal goes down yesterday because it was a fifth that could move. And, Tennessee was willing to pay some of the salary to get him to do it. Look, if you're going to dump players, you're going to have to pay some salary.
Looking at Cooper Kupp and what he could potentially add to a team, where do you think he could potentially end up if you had to predict it now? Because the trading deadline is November 5th, so it's right around the corner.
Yeah, it is right around the corner. I mean, look, Pittsburgh could use one. They've been talking about adding a wide receiver all the time. Would he fit their team? I mean, certainly he'd give them a boost, a slot receiver that could come in there. I think Tampa would, now in the light of the Chris Godwin injury, certainly would be an option. But, what's the price? Again, Tampa does a good job of drafting players. You don't want to give up draft picks for a guy that you're not sure can stay on the field. I mean, Kupp has had a hard time staying on the field, whether it's been lower body injuries, concussion, all those things. So, look, I think there's no question a lot of teams need a veteran receiver. But, again, it's what's the cost?
There's plenty of branches on Sean McVay's coaching tree, but one of them goes to Kevin O'Connell. Now with the Vikings, obviously, they won a Super Bowl together in L.A. The guys remain close friends, texting quite often. Earlier this week, Kevin O'Connell was asked about his relationship with McVay heading into this meeting. Here's what he had to say.
No, he's one of my closest friends in this league. I have so much love for him, and that's been well documented. But at the same time, especially on a short week, you can't get too carried away with that because it's still going to be 11 players in Vikings uniforms playing against 11 LA Rams in their uniforms, and thank goodness for the viewing pleasure at home. It's not going to be Sean and I going one-on-one.
Well, I think, look, both coaches know each other really well. These are kind of the games where you don't work on this game during the week. You work on this game in the offseason. Once the schedule comes out, then the coaches really spend a lot of time on the short week, especially against an opponent that you're typically not playing. And I'm sure that, Kevin O'Connell has spent time in the offseason with Brian Flores talking to him about, look, here's what Sean wants to do. Here's how they handle it. And then O'Connell's been able to watch Chris Shula's defense and see the changes that Sean McVay's had to make to the defense, starting with the first game of the year and then going to the second game where they had no rush lanes or containment on Kyler Murray and got torched in that game. This is a talent issue for the Rams. I mean, we haven't mentioned this pretty much all year, but losing Aaron Donald is significant. They've got some good young players in their defensive front, but those guys, whether it's Brandon Fisk, whether it's Brian Young, whether it's Kobe Turner, those are good players. But when you have an elite player like Donald, it's hard to replace them, and that's not an easy thing to do. They're young on defense. They're inexperienced on defense. They're improving. But I think Sean coming in and kind of helping the defense last 3 weeks have improved. But let's face it, the Raiders had ample opportunity to win that game. It's a 5-point game, and the Raiders turned it over 4 times. That's not very good.
Yeah, that was a confusing game. The line in this game reaching 3 as we speak on this Thursday morning. We'll talk about this game later on in the show, but Harrison, you had a couple NBA bets last night, the first true opening night of the new season. How did those bets turn out?
Ended up going 1-1 last night. Not going to invest too much in the beginning of the season. There's 82 games that each team plays, at least in the regular season. So going to really try and get some data points, but was able to cash out on the over between the Pelicans and the Chicago Bulls. Both of those teams last year, the last two teams in terms of three-pointers allowed, and they have relatively the same rosters / coaching staff. So I felt pretty confident using last year's data. I did not end up hitting the over yet on Marcus Smart assists. Ja Morant hit his over, which was set at 7.5. He finished with 10 assists. Marcus Smart only had 1. So going to take the L there and really look into some data because this is pretty much a new team adding in Marcus Smart, and there was no Jaren Jackson Jr. last night. I will say this, though, Grace. The most impressive win that I saw last night, the Charlotte Hornets. They have LaMelo Ball back. He's been a player who's been gone for a while because of all of his myriad of ankle injuries. The biggest addition they might have had this offseason, Charles Lee. Charles Lee was on the coaching staff for the Boston Celtics last year, and he was also on the coaching staff when the Milwaukee Bucks won their NBA title as well. So he might have a little culture change there in Charlotte, and that team might be a little bit better than people thought going into the season.
It has been a rough few seasons for the Hornets, so I'm curious to see how long this momentum lasts. But good for them. Got the season opening win. All right, coming up next, we are getting into other NFL headlines. Plus, we're breaking out the betting trends, which ones to fade, which ones to follow in college football. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Thursday on Follow the Money, Thursday night football with the Rams and the Vikings. We go over props and fantasy with Paul Charchian, the college football schedule with Brad Powers, and the meat man, Steve Wiss, with soccer picks. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's Late Night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Happy start to the football week to everybody who is tuning in. This is the VSiN Morning Line. I'm Harrison Sanford, joined by Michael Lombardi and Grace Remington. On Wednesdays, the injury reports come out in the NFL. And before we get into some college football news, I wanted to mention something that happened in an injury report yesterday, guys, that was kind of interesting to me. Dallas Cowboys kicker Brandon Aubrey, who seemed pretty valuable to the team so far this season, has been selected to a 12-person jury for a felony case in Tarrant County's 297th District Court. And there's no timetable when this case might end. Michael, in your years of being an executive, have you ever had a player or an executive have jury duty during the actual NFL season?
Not that he couldn't get out of. Like, I mean, look, we all have our civic obligations, understandable, right? But to me, it's hard to do jury duty when you have to travel and your job requires you. Certainly, you can postpone it until February, March, April when you have to do that. So I think to me, that's something that I would kind of take a look at. And I'm sure the Cowboys, with Jerry Jones's conduct, contacts, and influence, I'm sure they can get that done. I mean, he's a huge, huge element to what they do. I mean, they can't afford to go to San Francisco without Aubrey.
Grace, any thoughts?
Well, I read that he'll be good to go against the 49ers, but I was thinking the same thing Michael was. They have all the resources in the world. If they don't get him out of jury duty, that may be more concerning than the Cowboys' offense.
That is definitely true. I've actually never done jury duty before. I will do my civic duty if called upon, but I have not been called for jury duty yet. And you know, I'm not hoping anytime soon because we do kind of have a job to do here. All right, let's get to some more NFL news that we heard coming up throughout the course of this week. And we'll start with Michael's favorite team, the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young is slated to start now on Sunday after Andy Dalton sprained his thumb during a recent car crash this week. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the line immediately moved to 10, and now it's come back to 9.5 because of this news. And we know the Denver offense isn't explosive or you know, I mean, Denver's going to have a hard time scoring 20, you know. So if Carolina scores any points, it's hard to think that this game you could cover. But, you know, look, this Carolina team's a mess. I mean, Andy Dalton, unfortunately, got into a car accident, hurt his throwing hand thumb, which is a problem. But this is going from bad to worse. Now Bryce Young comes back in there, and they haven't been able to throw the football with Bryce Young at all. So I have no idea how you can take the Carolina Panthers, no matter how many points they put on the board.
The Browns also making a quarterback change with the injury to Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston is now QB1. That's not the only change going down on this Browns offense. Ken Dorsey, the first-year offensive coordinator, will take over play-calling duties. Michael, how do you expect this to impact Cleveland?
Well, they've been trying to get the play-calling duties away from Kevin Stefanski for a long time now. They started this offseason trying to get him not to do it, and he resisted. And now I think they've given up on that. I guess they want him to be the head coach. But look, the one thing about Winston, they will throw the ball and move the ball more effectively. It's already happened. I mean, when you look at when he went in the game, now I know the game was kind of over and it was behind. But when he went in the game, they went from 5.3 yards per attempt with Deshaun Watson up to 6.9 with Winston. So they've increased it, right? And this is a good team to throw the football against because the Ravens are not very good. They've allowed 84 points in the fourth quarter. They've only allowed 96 in the remaining other three quarters. Isn't that remarkable? 84 in the fourth, and they've only allowed 96 over the last the prior three quarters. So, look, this is going to take – Winston's got to protect the ball. I mean, because, you know, Winston is the Phil Niekro. You guys are way too young to remember Phil Niekro. He was a knuckleball pitcher back in the 70s, and he'd win 20 games because he pitched a lot, but he lose 22. You know, he was out there on the mound quite a bit. There was none of that, you know, you only go 7 innings in baseball back then. So Winston's going to give up some plays. There's no doubt. And that's what concerns you against a Raven team who needs turnovers, and then you're playing catch up all the time.
Sticking with the theme of quarterbacks, because we know they can move the number, we did get some news as it pertains to the Washington Commanders yesterday. Jaden Daniels missed practice, and his status is still uncertain. This is after suffering the rib injury against the Carolina Panthers, where he couldn't finish the first half last week. Michael, your thoughts on any potential time that Jaden Daniels might miss in this upcoming game?
Well, I think missing Wednesday practice is typical for a player who's coming off an injury. I think today's the key, right? If he's not out there doing something today, I think that's going to be problematic for the Washington team. But here's where it's more problematic. When you go through all the quarterbacks in the National Football League this season, Jaden Daniels leads the league in scramble yards by quarterbacks. He's got 266, 71.5% of his rush yards come on scramble. That's a lot. And so they'll lose that element of their offense, which has made their offense so effective, right? And I think, to me, 54% of the 66 rushes are when he takes off. The next closest guy is Lamar Jackson with 27 and Bo Nix with 27. So that's a true element of their offense, and if he doesn't play, it really affects them.
We're going to get to some college football trends as we continue this new week of football in the college and in college and in the NFL. But before we do that, I want to mention to you guys about our college basketball guide. Since college basketball tips off on November 4th. And starting tomorrow, you can get our college basketball betting guide. And this year's guide includes Matt Human's top 50 rankings, all 32 conferences previewed, Wooden Ward candidates, futures and season-long prop bets, plus betting nuggets on every major conference team from Greg Hoops Peterson. The only way to get the guide is to become a VSiN Pro subscriber. Sign up now for just $120 and get VSiN Pro access to everything we do until May 1st. That's all college basketball season long, March Madness, and beyond for less than $20 a month. Sign up today at vsin.com/subscribe. So speaking of the college ranks, let's go back to college football now, where we're really heating up and getting closer and closer to the college football playoff. We have some trends here that you can find via VSiN Analytics, and Grace is going to help us break them down as it pertains to games that are going to happen this weekend. So here goes one of the trends. In games featuring two ranked teams, with the home team being a double-digit favorite, under the total boasts an impressive 38-15 record since the beginning of the 2017 season. So where does that apply for this upcoming weekend? Well, that would mean you could play the under in Illinois and Oregon, which is set at 54.5. It also means that you could play the under between Missouri and Alabama, which is set at 53. Grace, would you follow these trends going into these two ranked matchups?
I would follow this one. My interpretation of this trend is basically the home team goes up big early, then lets off the gas late in the game so they can kind of get out of there unscathed. It's actually a betting system that I use a lot in college basketball. But for Illinois, Oregon, Illinois can't run the ball, which is obviously a problem against this Oregon front. The Illini rank 85th in rushing success rate. So if they're one-dimensional, the Ducks also have a great secondary, and for as good as Luke Altmaier has been all season, he might be due for some negative regression. He's thrown just one interception, but has 9 turnover-worthy plays. So if Illinois isn't scoring, obviously this game's going to go under. Mizzou, Alabama, this is a play I gave out earlier in the week. I believe on Tuesday I gave out the under 56.5. It's now been bet down to 53.5. So there you go. That's why you tune into the VSiN Morning Line. You got to get these numbers when they're at their best. Both defenses in this one dominate in finishing drives, making it hard for opponents to score once they cross the 40-yard line. Missouri is dealing with some important injuries, too. Brady Cook, obviously, a little bit hobbled, and then running back Nate Noel is out for this one as well. So it might be difficult for them to score and catch up to Alabama if they go up big.
Have a trend as it pertains to the undefeated Navy midshipmen going against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. All right, here's our next one. Since the start of the 2016 season, neutral field underdogs playing a team that they lost to in the previous season have gone 47-26. That is a 61.8% cover rate. Your thoughts on that one as it pertains to this matchup, Grace?
I think this trend makes a lot of sense. I would like to have a little bit more context. Are they conference opponents? Are they regional rivals? For Notre Dame, Navy this one works because they play each other so often. Notre Dame is 80-13-1 head-to-head against Navy. They've won the last 6. So there's a lot of familiarity there, which would explain why the underdog would cover the following year. And this Navy offense is much improved. Blake Horvath is the best triple option quarterback they've ever had. 7.9 yards per passing attempt or per carry, 12.3 yards per attempt. This offense ranks number 1 nationally in early downs and in finishing drives. Obviously, this Notre Dame team is a different animal with the NFL talent they have on their defensive front. I don't really see an edge on the number here, so I think this trend is legitimate, but it's not enough to push me over the edge and actually make a play on Navy here.
Looking forward to seeing how these trends play out this upcoming weekend. And I'd also say this too, with it being Halloween weekend, I'm also looking forward to seeing how the kids might be dressed up in the stadium.
And they're off.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Tonight starts another week of NFL football, and with the week getting started for football purposes, we will be getting to Michael Lombardi's power rankings in just a moment. Thank you for tuning in to the VSiN Morning Line. I'm Harrison Stanford, joined by Michael Lombardi and Grace Remington. We do have a couple of tidbits still left, though, from the college football trend. So we're going to get to those right now, and so continuing our theme from the last segment. So, Grace, here we go. I'm going to tip off another one for you. In games featuring two ranked teams since 2017, you will find that the team that has been ranked better, those teams have gone 106-20 straight up, and also 77, 45, and 4 against the spread. That's a 63% cover rate. How does those trends apply? Well, you would be looking at the Oregon game as well as Alabama taking on Missouri. Your thoughts?
The way I make sense of this trend is if it's two ranked teams, obviously it's going to be a sold-out crowd. Everyone's going to pack the stadium, so it's going to be loud and crazy, making it difficult for opponents to hear. They're going to get some false start penalties, other penalties that's going to set them back in the game. So this trend does make sense to me. For Alabama, I make the game 12, so it's not really an edge here. Not too high on either offense, especially because Jalen Milroe might be playing injured. So it's not enough for me to take a side on the side here. We already played the under, so that's, already got to play on the game there. But for Oregon, Illinois, I think Illinois might be a little overvalued looking at some of their results this season. In their most recent game against Michigan, Michigan outgained them by a lot, but lost because of a -3 turnover margin. Against Penn State, they did cover the 14-point spread because they had a 75-yard touchdown drive on their opening drive of the game, but then they did nothing the rest of the way, and Penn State missed 2 field goals. So that was a close cover. The Nebraska game went to overtime, and then they were outplayed by Kansas, but won that one because of major turnover luck. Kansas had 4 turnovers in that one. So I think Illinois is a little bit overvalued in this spot. I think the 21.5, I make the game 18, so not an edge for me, but still, I like the trend, but I'm not going to play either side in this one.
We're going to move over to one more trend here, Grace, and I can't believe this is going to be a circumstance where maybe we fade the Indiana Hoosiers, who've been having a standout season. Here is the trend. Both teams coming off of a game that was decided by a margin of 38 points or more, different from the final point spread, win or lose, have struggled in their next game, going just 135 and 185 and 1 against the spread. That is a 42% cover rate. That is over the last decade plus. That applies to Indiana laying 6.5 versus Washington and Nebraska getting 25.5 against the Buckeyes.
Well, that game was just decided by 41 points, and the closing line was 6.5. So I'm guessing this trend applies to bigger spreads because the winning team, who's coming off of a blowout, probably is a little inflated on the line. But you can't say this about Indiana here because they're dealing with the quarterback injury. So I think this is probably an outlier for this trend, Indiana. But when we're looking at Nebraska this week, 25.5-point dog to Ohio State, they're coming off a game in which they turned the ball over 5 times. They averaged just over 4 yards per play. Dylan Raiola has been trending down in the last 2 games, mainly because he has not been great under pressure. His completion percentage drops from 73% to 46% when he's under pressure. Ohio State, one of the best defenses in the country. They're a top 20 Havoc team. So I don't think it'll go any better for Nebraska. It is a big number. I did not feel inclined to take any side here. So I do think this trend makes sense, but for these 2 games in particular, not enough to push me over the edge and take one.
Can understand that. I will say this, though, Grace, considering what Indiana has done so far, I'm going to be curious to see where they are in the power rankings after this kind of week plays out in college football and where they might end up overall, because it has definitely been a standout season for the football Hoosiers. Speaking of power rankings, Michael Lombardi doesn't have the Kansas City Chiefs in his top 5. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, Are you the type of sports bettor who's looking to get down $10,000 or more on an NFL line at the best price in the market? Or perhaps you're looking to get your in-game play instantly accepted. Introducing SportBet, the app that's going to change sports betting. Minus 104 lines instead of the typical minus 110. Instant in-game betting and a concierge player service. SportTrade is perfect for those who want a premium betting experience. SportTrade is live in New Jersey, Colorado, Iowa, and now Arizona, and coming to Virginia soon. Download SportTrade and use code VSiN to earn 10% cash back on each wager in your first week. Terms apply. You must be 21 years or older to play. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, as I mentioned, wanted to get to Michael Lombardi's power rankings, and I think this one is rather interesting, as they all are. Go through them real quick. Number 1, Detroit Lions. Number 2, Baltimore Ravens, coming off of their comeback win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. Number 3, and up 4 spots, the Buffalo Bills. Number 4, the Green Bay Packers, who've actually dropped a spot despite their win against the Houston Texans this past weekend. And down a spot after their loss to the Lions, the Minnesota Vikings. Quite the movement here, Michael, including the Kansas City Chiefs dropping out. Can you explain why you have these teams listed the way you do?
Well, everything I do with the power rankings has nothing to do with the eye test. It has everything to do with the numbers based on the 18 categories that I think determine winning. And so when you total those up and your team comes out, then they come out with a total number. And that total number from low to high determines where you rank. So I'm trying to take subjectivity out of it. I'm trying to take bias out of it. I'm trying to give teams that have played better in the critical areas that maybe not show up in the game book or don't show up in the scoreboard. So this is, you have 3 teams from the NFC North in my top 5. That's pretty impressive. Both of them are very good. I thought Buffalo last week, obviously against Tennessee, they've shored some things up defensively. Baltimore probably could be ranked higher if they had better numbers in the fourth quarter, better numbers in terms of points per play allowed when their defense, because they've given up so many points in the fourth quarter. So look, the Chiefs their numbers offensively are not good. They know they have Patrick Mahomes, but they're having a hard time throwing the football. And now without Pacheco, they have a hard time running it. Their defense has carried them, and they're right outside the top 5. But the reality of it is they're just below Minnesota. But the reality of it is they're missing some things really on offense that has created their number just to be a tad higher than Minnesota. Can they fix it? Oh, yeah, without a question. But when you're 25th in turnover margin, when you're 25th in red zone offense, those numbers, and you're 29th in sacks per play, those numbers add up. And then you're 27th in giveaway. I think those are problems.
What changed with the Bills that made them jump from 7 to 3 in your power rankings?
Well, I think ultimately they got better. They really only have one bad category, and that's now third down. How many third downs are allowed to be converted? Those and third down defense. Third down offense and third down defense. Everything else, they're pretty good. Everything else, they're in the top 15. And so they come out with a really good power ranking because, look, their quarterback ranking is good. They're the best turnover margin team. They're the best offense in football in terms of points per play. The fourth quarter they've been good. Their offensive line sack percentage is 3rd best in the country in the NFL. So, and then their red zone offense is 7th. So a lot of low numbers. And when you have a lot of low numbers, you move up.
Let's take a look at Michael's bottom 5 teams in the NFL. Miami Dolphins at 28. Jacksonville Jaguars at 29, Tennessee Titans at 30, 31 New England Patriots, and last, the Carolina Panthers, who again will be starting Bryce Young at quarterback this upcoming weekend. I do want to focus in here, Michael, on the number 28 team according to your power rankings, the Miami Dolphins. One would have to assume that they're going to be upticking and not spend too much of a time in this 28 spot with Tua Tagovailoa coming back to the team, I would believe.
Yeah, This is the hard team to handicap because when you put their numbers in and then you create your number, you've got 4 games of bad numbers, right? You have 4 games of data, and so when you look at this, you're saying, well, Arizona should be the favorite because Arizona's power ranks higher. I have Arizona should be a 3.83 favorite in the game based on the last 4 weeks and the collection of data that has occurred. But we know that's not real. So you've got to move that around, and you've got to change that because of the fact that their quarterbacking change, and they're going to be changing with their offense. But let's make no mistake about it. I mean, Miami has not played very well, and when you come back off the concussion, there's really no guarantee you're going to start and play like you picked it up there. There's a lot of indicators. I mean, they've only scored 70 points in 6 games, and they had 2 of those games. Well, 1.5 had 2 of them.
Going to be interested to see how the Miami Dolphins bounce back from all of the injuries that they've had to occur. Not just with Tua Tagovailoa, but on the defensive side of the ball as well. With Tua in the lineup, can they score more points? Will they be able to get back into the playoff race in the AFC? Will be fascinating to watch throughout the duration of the season. We'll continue to discuss the NFL coming up next. Simon Hunter of the Action Network joins us.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
The only thing better than football is the excitement of all the contests. Catch the Circa Friday Football Invitational at 9 p.m. Eastern with picks from some of the sharpest bettors around the country. Then on Saturdays at 9, watch the Football Contest Show, where our expert hosts and guests go through the consensus choices for some of the biggest betting contests in the world. The fun doesn't stop there. Visit VSiN.com for the full lineup and join us on the Sports Betting Network.
watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we have been previewing these NFL games and headlines all morning long. Now it's time to lock in some bets, and here to help us do so is Simon Hunter, NFL betting analyst from the Action Network, joining us on the Progressive guest line. Simon, thanks so much for waking up with us this morning. Let's start with your pick for tonight in Thursday Night Football. Kind of a tricky one because the Vikings are coming off an emotional win. They have to travel on a short week. The Rams obviously have been injury ravaged all season long, but getting Cooper Kupp back. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, that's a tough loss for the Vikings, right? They knew that if they won that game, they'd be kind of in the pole position for this division. Now they're having to go on the road and go face a Rams team that's desperate. And when I view this Vikings team, I do think the Lions had the blueprint on how to attack them offensively, and I think McVay will take advantage of that. But even more so, people are talking about McVay on a short week. He's actually incredible. Like, he is so good at preparing his team when he doesn't have a lot of time. In his career, he started 0-3. And since then, he's 6-0 on short weeks, and he's 4-0 with Stafford as the quarterback on short weeks. So clearly these guys know how to prepare together on these short weeks. And, you know, we've seen it time and time again. These kind of teams like the Vikings who start out really hot, right, that no one really, you know, believed in coming to the season, they eventually fizzle because teams kind of figure them out. Like, good coaching can take you very far, but eventually you need good coaching and talent. And my view of this Vikings team is they have peaked. Like, defensively, what Flores has done has been incredible. But I think there are ways to attack it. The biggest way is you have to run the ball. And that's what the Rams want to do, right? With Williams, they want to run the ball. So despite, you know, all the money, Joe Public is very happy right now, right? They're 17-0 the last 2 weeks on when they're getting, you know, it's the public bet of the week. They've been really solid. This week, I think it comes back around, and it starts on Thursday night, right? No one's betting the Rams right now. But we've seen that number go from 3.5 to 3, and now it's 2.5 in a couple of books. So I want people to grab the 3 now because I do think it gets down to 2.5 by kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, you and Chad spent a lot of time, Chad Millman, your co-host on the Favorites podcast, which you guys do every Tuesday and Thursday. Outstanding. You also do it on Sunday. I'm an avid listener to it. I think it's wonderful. You guys go through it. But as we all have learned this year, it's tough. There's so many bad teams. And when I look at the Rams, my only concern is they haven't been able to stop anybody from running the football, and they really can't defend the forward pass. So Minnesota looks like, okay, yeah, they can stop the run, and it'll be interesting to see how it's all going to play out once this, you know, once they get into the game. Let's talk about another team that looks bad, but maybe not as bad as their numbers say, the Jaguars. And this is a big game for Jacksonville this week. I mean, they've got an opportunity to get their season back on track a little bit, if you think, but you're going to take them in the points against the Packers, who this could be a trap game knowing they have the Lions at home next week.
And that's exactly my thinking here. I think they might overlook this Jaguars team, and it also isn't that great of a matchup for the Green Bay Packers. You've seen this season, this team, they've kind of been up and down. You know, 1 week their defense might show up, but then Jordan Love will have a really bad game. We saw it last week, right? He can't stop turning the ball over since he's come back from this injury. And I think that plays out here. I think he's going to keep trying to turn the ball over, but it's also this Jaguars team, I think they found something with Tank Bigsby. Like, that running game has really improved since he's become their number one running back. And if you look at this Green Bay team, they're another team that struggles with runs up the middle. And that's what the Jaguars, surprisingly, that's their best quality. They're not great at running the ball outside, but up the middle, they're very strong. So to me, the Jaguars are a team that just have had bad luck. I mean, between Trevor Lawrence's turnovers, some of the coaching decisions they had early on in the year, they're just a team that public perception doesn't really value them, where on the flip side, anyone's model is going to like them, right? I think most professionals have this number of 3.5. We saw this number at 5, came down to 4.5. Now it's down to 4 most books. So there's still value here, but it is a very fine line at half a point of value right now.
Simon, let's move on over to Sunday Night Football. And it seems like a big game for both teams, including the Dallas Cowboys, who are coming off of a bye week, taking on a 49ers team that has a wealth of injuries, even though the Cowboys have a fair share of injuries on their side as well. How do you think this matchup plays out?
Yeah, this is honestly just a bet on me trusting Dak more than Purdy. I think Dak has been able to overcome some of these injuries on the defensive side where offensively he's put more on his shoulders, on his plate. We've seen with Purdy, he's just struggled to make the right decisions, right? Now you're taking away a guy on this team that really sets the tone with Debo. Like this 49ers team without Debo, since Purdy's taken over as quarterback, they're 0-4 when Debo doesn't play. So that right there lets you know that it does mess with their whole offensive scheme when Debo's out. Now Ayuk's out as well. So it's like, okay, your number one receiver now is Kittle. And we all know Kittle's great as a blocking tight end, but he's not been the same as a receiving tight end in the last few years. So to me, this is more about this number is just too high. It's too much respect still to a 49ers team that I get it. They were this great team last year, but they're not that team that people perceive, right? They just have had too many injuries on the offensive side of the ball. And I think just the biggest one at the end of the day is just McCaffrey, right? We've seen them struggle in the red zone. So to me, if they were fully healthy, yeah, this spread could be 5.5, 6, no problem. But with all these injuries, I make this line 3. So it's still at 4, 4.5. I'd go grab that right now.
In Bears Commanders, we were all hoping to get a matchup of the top 2 quarterbacks taken in the draft, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. Daniels obviously dealing with that rib injury, and the line movement in this one has kind of followed opinion on if he'll go or not. Yesterday, he sat out of Wednesday practice, and with that, the line has moved the Bears' way. They now sit at -2.5. How do you see this game?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play. It wouldn't be wise for them to rush him back. That's the type of injury where he's so tough. You talk to all his teammates. He's been banged up a couple times this year, and he's played through it. He was physically in pain trying to throw the ball in a couple days ago. That doesn't change. I don't know if you guys have ever had any rib injuries. It lingers. Like, it's not the kind of thing that goes away in a week or two. It's kind of a thing that takes 3 to 4 weeks. So this is just an easy spot to see them not playing him, right? They've already been way above what we projected them out this season. But I think at the end of the day, everyone realizes they've just been extremely lucky as well. Like, it's so rare to go 9 for 9 on 4th down, let alone with any quarterback, especially a rookie quarterback. Now you're bringing in Marcus Mariota, who we all know he's just not that good of a quarterback. He's as good as a backup, right? He's a mature veteran who could teach him a lot. But as a consistent starter, Mariota's not someone you want back there starting for you. So I can see this Washington team coming crashing down to earth, especially against a Bears defense that's very good against the pass. So now they know, okay, we'll just stack the box. We'll make them beat us in the air with Marcus Mariota, and that's how they'll win this game. So I really like this matchup for the Bears defensively. And on the flip side, offensively, we all know Washington's not that good of a defense. Sure, they look great playing with a lead. Now we're about to see what type of team they are when they have to play from behind.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. And certainly going to Mariota is not exactly an easy game. I know you're an Eagle fan, and this is a big game for the Eagles here. They go to Cincinnati. I think Cincy knows they can throw. When the Eagles play against teams that can throw the ball, Green Bay, Tampa, they have struggled defensively. When they play against bad teams offensively, they look like they have a good defense. Where's your stand on this game? It's 2.5. It's stayed at 2.5 pretty much all week. What are your thoughts? Even though Cincy's offensive line could be in trouble without Orlando Brown at left tackle.
Agree. I think this is such a game where we will learn so much about both these teams. I think all of us think to ourselves, which one of these teams are frauds, right? Which one of these teams are actually going to step up and become a good playoff team? Because right now, the Bengals, who have they beaten, right? They've beat up on bad teams this year. That's all they do. So if they beat the Eagles, I think we know now, okay, the Eagles are a bad team. If the Eagles come out and play at the caliber people expect, well, I expect they should roll this Bengals team who has injuries not only on the offensive line, but defensively as well. Like, they cannot stop the run. So this to me seems like a type of game where, we'll learn a lot about Sirianni. Sirianni claims to be a run-first team. So if the Eagles get down 7 and they got Hurts going out there throwing 3 straight pass plays and going 3 and out, that's all you need to know. It's like to me, they're a mentally weak team that they adjust too quick. So I'm excited to see how the Eagles play this one because it'll tell us a lot about them going forward. Where are they really going to be a run-first team that leans on their best player in Saquon? Or they'd be the same team we've seen this year that they don't score in the first quarter, they panic, and then they need to get lucky and have things break their way to kind of win these games at the end of the game. So to me, at 2.5, I would take the Eagles number, but once it gets down to 2 minus 1.5, I think the value shifts to the Bengals.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, Simon, I mean, the Eagles they forced 2 turnovers this entire season. Think about that. And the way if Cincy protects, I don't know how Philly covers them. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Harrison.
No, it's fine. We have just under a minute left here. I find this matchup fascinating in the AFC West, Simon, between the Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. Raiders getting 10. Your thoughts?
Just play the number. Take the 10. Trust Mahomes will turn the ball over. And they're not this team that just blows teams out anymore. And that coming off a bad game last week, the Raiders, I think they bounced back here against Kansas City.
Simon Hunter from the Action Network joining us with his best bets. Thank you, Simon, and good luck with your plays this week. Coming up next on the VSiN Morning Line, it's News or Noise.
It's that magical time of year, the sports equinox, when all 4